What's up, guys, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today we're on episode 85. I just want to take a little aside to say I hope everybody that follows my channel that's on the northeast coast of the United States, like anybody in Jersey and New York and some people in PA, I hope you guys are doing all right, man. It's been 3 days since Ida came through here. I'm out in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and for some reason, tornadoes are a thing now in Pennsylvania. There were never tornadoes here before, or at least not at the rate that there are now. So I don't know what's going on. It's getting crazy out there with all this extreme weather. But like I said, I hope everybody's doing okay. And I know how stressful it can be to be dealing with floods and power outages, and you don't have internet, and you can't like check the news and see what's on TV, and you just feel like completely overwhelmed. So everybody just take care of yourselves out there. But anyways, today I want to go back and revisit a topic that I talked about all the way back in episode 45 on my channel. And that episode was the lesser known remixes of Jonathan Peters. Now, I got a little bit of heat for that because some of the remixes that I picked in that episode, linked down below, were considered popular by some of the people that frequented Sound Factory a lot more than I got to go. But to me, they were remixes that flew under the radar, but were still like bombs and like needed a little bit more representation, in my opinion. Today's episode, though, is going to be concentrated around Jonathan Peters' top 5 remixes, again, in my opinion, that I think were like the most obvious choices that represented his sound and that big vocal era that Sound Factory also represented. Now, for people that don't know a lot about Jonathan Peters, which is really anybody that's outside of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, maybe some Florida folks, most people don't know who he is. He had this crazy cult following. He was the DJ on Saturday nights at the club called Sound Factory, which ran from 1997 to 2004 on 46th Street in New York. And I had the luxury of going to see Jonathan Peters 3 times. I also went to see Love and Lottie, who did the Friday night parties there, and I had a great time there too. Sound Factory had a supreme sound system, and above all else, it was known for having the best music around. I first got wind of Sound Factory after going to a Friday night at Club Exit. Now, there was a sort of competing faction that was happening in 1999 and 2000 where there were Exit kids and there were Sound Factory kids, and there was almost like a cheesy rivalry between them, like who's got the best parties, which DJs are better, which style of music that's being played is better. It was kind of ridiculous in hindsight, but kind of fun too at the same time. So anyways, I went to a Tony Draper party on Friday night, and I was coming back on the New Jersey Transit line, coming back south down to Trenton, and there was a girl that sat in front of me on the train. It was like 7 in the morning on, I guess it was a Saturday morning. And I started talking to her, and she was basically, she was like, hey, what were you doing last night? And I was talking to her about Exit, and she was like, oh, I go to Factory all the time. The music there is so good. Jonathan Peters is so good. You have to go see him. So she was describing the style of these like big epic vocals, and that's really what Sound Factory was when it came down to it. I know there was tribal house played there, and house and techno and pots and pans, but really the real driving factor behind Sound Factory, the thing that got people so crazed about it, was the big vocals. They would take vocals from popular artists, some that I'm going to go through here, and remix them and rebuild them into these dramatic, sometimes 10, 15-minute drawn-out versions where it wasn't just a track with a vocal sample in it. It had a verse, and it had a bridge, and it had a hook, and then it broke down, and it went into phase 2. So there was like a real structured arrangement to these tracks, a very up and down type roller coaster ride. And the people that went to Sound Factory rode that roller coaster together and just took off into the stars. So that was what it was all about at Sound Factory. So let me take you through the, in my opinion, top 5 biggest remixes. Like if you just want to start somewhere and understand what the sound was at Sound Factory back then, this is like your Bible. This is where to start from. My first here is Whitney Houston's track. Now this came out in 1999, and it's her remix, Jonathan Peters' remix of My Love Is Your Love. And when I talk about having complicated arrangements and very like diverse structure to the song, this is the epitome of that. There's a lot of breakdowns in here, a lot of build-ups, a lot of looping, repeating vocal segments, and it really just comes together to create this unifying force on the dance floor. I will admit that like this era has passed. You probably could not get today's party people and young people to come together on a song like this, but this is what people were sort of like glomming onto back in the days. It has kind of a light touch to it. This is not, even though it has, you know, big bass and drama, this is not like a speaker tester. This is more of like you're closing out the party. Maybe it's 6, 7, 8, 9. Actually, pick your time in the morning when it came to Sound Factory. But this is where people were, you know, probably walking around the dance floor, hugging each other, kissing each other on the cheek, and basically spreading the love. My next pick for you is probably just as big in the eyes of people that really were like truly diehard Sound Factory fans, and that is the Paula Cole remix of I Believe in Love, or the Jonathan Peters remix of Paula Cole's I Believe in Love. Now, this is the Paula Cole band, where Paula Cole was accompanied by basically two gentlemen producers, and her vocals on this are so strong. You'll hear in the sample here, I kind of have a longer drawn out sample for this because I wanted to capture from like all the way from the start of a build up until the drop and the release. I wanted to capture that, and it took 2 minutes for the track to get there in the sample. So just kind of bear with me. But in the beginning, you'll hear that the acapella of Paula Cole hitting a high note, and there's a little bit of reverb on it, and maybe a tiny touch of elements in the background, but it's mostly like the acapella. And if I could sort of portray the essence of what it felt like to be standing on the main floor of Sound Factory late in the morning, it like that moment, her hitting that high note is kind of what it was all about. And I know that sounds ridiculous now because you just don't see people in crowds reacting to vocals that way, but like this was like men and women, like even the biggest, you know, roided up tribal tattoo dudes that were hanging out at Factory knew all these vocals, and they shamelessly sung along to them. It's just what everybody did. It was part of the culture. So again, this is, I think, out of everything that I'm going to present to you today, the Paula Cole remix is the epitome of the Sound Factory vocal, and I hope you guys feel this. My next pick for you is one that came out a little bit later. Now we're up to 2001. And this is Jessica Falker's To Be Able to Love. When I was talking earlier about bridges and verses and hooks, this track is a really good example of that. You have different segments of the song that tell you a story that basically, in this case, portrays a story of a girl that's heartbroken, and she's basically saying like, hey, I know you'd be a good person to date, but I don't have the capacity or the ability to date you right now because I have all this other crap going on in my life. But it's a very relatable vocal, and I always found this one kind of interesting out of all of the JP remixes. I guess because of the raspiness of her voice. I think her voice is really interesting. And there's also like an unashamedly cheesy aspect to the synths in this. It's very busy and kind of bubbly and floaty. And I always just thought it was just interesting. It kind of stands out a little bit from like the Whitney and the Paula Cole that I just showed you because of that cheesiness, but I do love it for that. My next track for you is one that actually was featured on the Live with Jonathan Peters CD, the very first like official CD that you could get by Jonathan Peters if you went to Sam Goody. Sam Goody was like the official music store place to go back in the day. I guess it was replaced by FYE, and now I don't even know if FYE is around anymore. But anyways, that was like my way of going to Sound Factory when I couldn't go. I live in Philadelphia, so for me to find a friend to go with me and drive to Trenton and take the train up and then hop a cab, it was an ordeal. Even as a 22-year-old or a 21-year-old, it was very hard for me to get there. So I basically lived vicariously through all of those little CDs that JP put out over the years, and the Live with Jonathan Peters one featured this Nomad, I Wonder. Now this track has like a big soaring male vocal in it. I've always said that it's tough for a male vocal to go down well, but this one sounds really smooth. And it reminds me of that track, if you guys remember, by London Suede, where they say everything will flow. Jonathan Peters actually played that on the very first Classics night ever in 2002, and I just remember coming out of the men's room onto the main floor and just feeling like that vocal presence go across the floor, and I remember feeling the power of it.
Will I make it home? It makes me wonder. Will I make it home? Will I make it?
My fifth and final pick for you guys is really what I consider to be the last gasp for a Sound Factory. This is Jonathan Peters' All This Time, and the vocal was done by a girl named Silver Sharp, who was like basically like an R&B vocalist. All This Time has sort of a cheesy melody in it, but I'm not gonna say that it's bad. It's cheesy and it's catchy and it got the job done. It also has more of a powered up kind of hard house kick than the other tracks that I just showed you. So it does have a driving force, and I know that even though Sound Factory really started to decline probably in 2003, like the last 2 years that it was open, the crowd got really sketchy. I remember going to a party in late 2003 and looking around and feeling like, man, if something bad happens here, if somebody starts pushing and shoving, like, I don't know if all these people are going to get out safely. Like, it just had like a feeling of like every man for himself, and everything was kind of like not about the vibe anymore, and just people getting weird under the staircases. It was just it got to be an ugly scene. So it was very good that, in my opinion, that the club just shut down, and I think a year or two later it reopened as Pasha, which kind of breathed new life into it. But anyways, here the vocal all this time, really nice, like almost like the capstone of the vocal era, in my opinion. When I talked about bridges and hooks and verses, this has that. And if you look at Jonathan Peters' catalog, at least for the stuff that came out on vinyl, like this was kind of the end of it. And in general, the era of the giant vocal sort of died along with this, in my opinion. That was when they stopped making them.
I close my eyes, I don't wanna see no more, 'cause you're not in my vision. There's no open door, and you won't let me in, and it can't quite sink in, 'cause I thought you were happy. What was I thinking? Oh, 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 I had so much of you, I couldn't dream last night. I feel the touch of you, even though you're not by my side. Can't get enough of you, 'cause you make the darkness night. After all this time, you still possess my mind. After all this time, I still want you in my life.
All right, that's all, guys. I hope to the Sound Factory fans and people that went every week, I hope that I did this justice. I know that this is like sacred territory for you guys. I really try to just represent these sounds to people that aren't from New York and New Jersey and that didn't get to go and might want to understand what it was all about. Enjoy your holiday weekend out there and take care. Be safe. Peace.